You're quite prolific for a young man especially. And one of the things I've noticed is you write not only for adults, but you write for children.
For young people, yeah.
And you have a passion and a commitment to do that. Not everybody does that. Why do you do that?
That came about, I think there was two ways that came about. When I was in New York, I was really, you know, radical, revolutionary, you know, Marxist, Leninist, and I really wanted my students, I mean, not my peers, you know, on the poetry scene in New York, to do something, to say something in the work, to really, and I just felt like they weren't taking, a lot of them, a few did, but a lot of them weren't taking poetry as serious as I was.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that did, you know, Kevin Powell, Paul Beatty, Willie Perdermo, Jessica K. Moore, Saul Williams, Asha Bandelli, Letta Neely, you know, I knew that, and Suhair Hamad, I knew that they were going to continue on. Carl Hancock Rux, these folks, Tish Benson. But there was a lot of people on that so-called spoken word scene in New York that I just felt like I needed to communicate with a younger generation. And I saw how Langston was very versatile in that regard. And so it was kind of a natural offshoot. What's so odd is that I wasn't raised with any children's books or anything like that. So it was when I was in my 20s and 30s that I started to read and fall in love with children's literature and young adult literature. And I noticed that a lot of the writers of color were really saying some heavy-duty stuff that I didn't find in the poetry, the adult poetry. So I was fascinated by that. And quite naturally, voices started coming, young people's voices started coming into my head, and I started writing from that perspective because I felt like, you know, people don't take children and young people that seriously. They don't ask them serious questions and things like that. We take them for granted. But they have a lot of things to say. And I wanted to reach those generations.
What do you mean when you said you didn't have children's books?
In my house, I didn't have any books. We didn't have books growing up. You know, the only person I saw reading was my grandmother, and she was either reading her Bible, she was very, very, very Catholic, and or cheap paperback novels, you know. There wasn't that, you know, books and stuff like that. I wasn't influenced in that way. It was being forced to write a book report in the 9th grade at Junior High School 101 in the Bronx, Brooklyn Boulevard, by my teacher, Mr. Dillis Reyes, where I neglected to do, but he gave us the makeup, and I fell in love with a book. I chose a book to write about called Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes.
Yeah, Daniel Keyes.
I told the story a lot, but that was the book that literally grabbed me and said, hey, because I would start books and I would get past, you know, I couldn't get past the second page because I was so much of a TV head, you know?
Well, let me stop you there just a second. Flowers for Algernon. You know, you're a very political poet. It surprises me that the book that inspired you on this journey is
That's a very political book.
It was a movie of the week, man. I mean, you know, I'm just saying.
No, that's very political, that book. You got to read it. It's dealing with a lot of serious issues that have to do with not only just the mental health capacity, but also science and ethics and human beings and experimenting with human beings, you know.
But as I remember the story, the challenge was to science, but you challenged power directly, and that strikes me as very different.
No, look, this is the thing, right? There's always various ways to bear witness. James Baldwin always talked about being a witness. You don't have to just be attacking straight on a government or a power force. You could be signifying on so many different levels. You could be just telling us a pure story, right? The slave narratives, you know. People are just talking about their life under slavery. Very political. Do you think their intent was, I'm going to challenge slavery? No, they wanted to just tell their story. And because the power of their story, you know, even if you tell your life story, being a black man in America, growing up in America, and you don't have any political intent, it's just going to automatically be political. Be socially relevant, because you're going to be talking about your black experiences.
As we get ready to wrap this up, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is, you talk about witness. What would you like your witness to be for the children to come through your work?
Well, it's always good to ask the question why, you know. I was one of these kids that when I was a little kid, and you know, in those days, our family used to always look at TV together and stuff like that. There would be certain movies that we always be sitting around in the room or in the living room looking at together. And I was a pain in the butt, you know, because I always wanted to know why everything was happening in the movie. Why did they do that? Why did he shoot him? You know, and everybody like, shut the hell up! We want to pay attention. But and little children, as you know, being a father, they constantly ask questions growing up, and that's how they learn. But I think the most important question is the question why, and even adults need to be asking why. Why is the U.S. government in the Middle East? Why are there so many homeless? Why do we have to debate whether people should get health care? That doesn't make sense to me. Why do we still have racism? You know, why is the First Lady depicted in such a derogatory way by certain people in the country? Why is the President of the United States, even though I may agree with some of his politics and some of his choices, why is he, because he's black, being treated in such a different way? So, you know, all of these whys and whys and whys, and Amiri Baraka used to say, you know, you ask why enough and you become wise. You know, because of the whys and you become wise.
Why don't you read us a final poem?
A final poem?
Yeah, man.
Okay, let me try the new manuscript that's coming out. It's called
What's that called?
An Onion of Wars. And it's
is that,
hard.
Is that also in Willow? Is that also in Willow Press?
No, this is Third World Press. An Onion of Wars is coming out in Third World Press. I'm thinking, let me do something about hip-hop. I have a section, a whole hip-hop section called Something Hip-Hop This Way Comes. And this page is on 57, if I could just find it real quick. Okay, here it is. Oh, I think it shifted. Okay, hold up. Security. All right. Yeah, I think it shifted. We got to change the table of contents numbers. This is a poem, and I've been having these discussions in my class lately. Let me just put this down. Called "Hip Hop Hurts Sometimes," and it begins with a quote that I invented. It's called "Sometimes with the beats comes a beating." And this is, you know, young people. She was caught by surprise. 2 words raised up against her like fists. The bling of brass knuckles disguised as gold teeth crashing down on her from the booming speakers in the trunk of an SUV. Hip-hop hurts sometimes, these words said, riding on the back end of an unavoidable beat like the backhand of a pimp, like the cat calls of old cats holding up the corner with 40s and blunts. All she wanted to do was go to the corner store and get some Pampers for her little sister, get some Wonder Bread and Now and Laters, get a Diet Pepsi and a 7-Up for her grandmother and aunt. But these words made it hard for her. They knocked her upside her head like her stepfather trying to snatch her innocence, like her jealous boyfriend trying to control her life. Wasn't the usual, yo, shorty, let me get those digits, I'm a producer. Or the slow crawl of cars creeping along the curb trying to get her attention. But something heavy with a boxer's bass, something hard and smacking like a Barry Bonds blast, knocked her upside her head so hard her ego shrank. Her self-esteem cowed in the corner of her mind, made her dizzy, made her confused. She was disoriented and delirious, could hardly make it up the stairs. The ringing would not stop, reverberated like a break dance beat breaking inside her head. She wondered if it was true. What she heard, what stuck to her like dog shit on the bottom of her shoe was true. At 13, what did she know? Was she actually a bitch and a hoe? Was that what her brother thought? Was that what her father thought? Is that what her uncles and cousins and all men think? Those two words made their way through the irresistible beat, made their way through the overwhelming heat of that hot summer street, climbed up out of the speakers, bum rushing her, catching her by surprise, lies darting about like a prize fighter's lightning fast gloves, snatching something from her. The flash and bling of brass knuckles giving her a shiner, a blue-black reminder, dubious stars twirling like flies just above her head. She felt nauseous, dropped her bags, clutching her flat stomach, bent over in the staircase, crying uncontrollably, tears huge and heavy and hot with hurt. Each drop a slave ship of pain poured out of her like buckets of blood, as if she were pregnant with something dead.
Whoo. Yo, man, I love you. Thank you, thank you.